Hello and welcome to the Atheist Experience. Today is October 23rd, 2005. I am your host, Russell Glasser, and my co-host this week is Jeff D.
Hi, folks.
And on this side, we have our guest, David Kent.
Hi. Hey, Dave.
We are sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday at Crescent City Beignets at 1211 West 6th Street, a couple of blocks west of Lamar. That starts at 11:30 and is open to any atheist or atheist-friendly people. You don't need to be a member to come. That's every Sunday except for the third Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at the Austin History Center on 9th and Guadalupe. Those start at 12:30. The next lecture date will be November 20th, and I have not been informed yet of who the speaker will be. Other regular events include Godless Gamers every Monday at 7 o'clock at my house. See the website, www.atheist-community.org, for information on how to contact me and get directions. Or email our show address, tv@atheist-community.org, and that will get through to me. Also, Atheist Happy Hour on Thursdays at 7:30 at Antonio's Tex-Mex on the southbound feeder of I-35 just south of 183. You can check the website calendar for more information on regular and special events. We also have our regular internet audio show called The Nonprofits every Saturday on freethoughtradio.com. The show is hosted by Jeff D., co-hosted by Dennis Lubay, and also features Matt Dillahunty and usually me. Yesterday was a live show, and it has not been uploaded to the archive yet, but it will be soon, www.nonprofitsradio.com. And the next live show will be November 5th. The ACA has a board meeting on the second Sunday of every month before the regular meeting. Currently, we are meeting at Schlotsky's Deli on 218 South Lamar, south of the bridge. All ACA members are welcome to come and sit in on board meetings, but only board members may vote. The next board meeting will be on November 13th. If you enjoy the program today and you think you'd like to come and meet us, we regularly meet for dinner after the show. Currently, we are meeting at Fresh Choice, still, located at 9761 Great Hills Trail behind the Arboretum. To get there from downtown, go north on Research, just past 360, and turn left on Great Hills Trail. Fresh Choice is a great big salad bar and buffet. As with other events, atheists and atheist-friendly people are welcome to come join us, but as usual, don't go there to proselytize. If you want to convert us all to Christianity, then call the show now when the phone number goes up. We'll all be there after the show at around 6:45, so you can come and meet all the people who make the show happen. I have two special announcements, in fact. One is an upcoming debate between the ACA's Paul Wilson versus a Catholic theology student. The topic will be, is there an afterlife? This will be at the Alamo Cinema Draft House in South Lamar. Starts at 7 p.m. on November 1st. That's a Thursday. And for more information, you can go to Dionysium.com. I assume, yeah, there it is. Okay, that's DIONYSIUM.com if you're listening to the audio stream. The Free Thought Society of Texas State will have its first ever meeting. That's a student organization. It's going to be at Texas State University in San Marcos, Wednesday, October 26th. It's in the LBJ Student Center, room 3-6.1. Unfortunately, there's no time specified here. So 4 p.m. And again, check atheist-community.org if you happen to be just listening to me and can't write it down fast enough. First ever meeting of the Free Thought Society of Texas State. Be there, especially if you're a student and can do it regularly. That's all for the announcements, and now I'm going to turn first to David Kent.
Okay. Hi. When Kellen von Hauser and Howard Thompson and Diane Manketic and Ralph Shirley and myself put together ACA back in 1996, we had in mind creating a community for and of atheists, because most atheists are loners. And it was our intent to foster positive atheism and to promote the separation of state and church. It was not our intent to attack religions or to attack religion generally. However, as Jeff might say, soon after we put together the Atheist Experience, this show you're watching right now, we discovered that there was a bully on the block. Every 6 months, down came the Mormon Church from Utah and preempted our atheist airtime. And now and then we have said a few things about the Mormon Church, but we decided to give it 15 minutes today to put Mormonism back in the box. No nonsense, no hearsay, nothing that the Mormon Church could spin away. And the way I have decided to do that was to review 3 facts about the founder of the Mormon Church. So, Joseph Smith Jr. is the founder of the Mormon Church, and he was born 200 years ago, approximately in 1805 in Vermont. By the time he was 24, he had written the Book of Mormon, and he announced that he was forming his own church, which he decided to call the Church of the Latter-day Saints, which he later renamed the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, comprised mostly of his own relatives. As soon as he announced this, all of the neighbors of the Smith family there sounded the alarm. They said, "Look out for Joe Smith, he's a con artist, and he has been arrested and convicted of being a con artist, and we're just telling you to watch out for him and his church." The position of the Mormon Church in Utah for years and years and years has been that this story that was put around about Joseph Smith to discredit him, which it certainly would, was phony, never happened, and was just was without any foundation at all. In 1942, church historian Francis Kirkham wrote, well, if this story is true, if a court record confession could be identified and proved against Joseph Smith, then it follows that his believers must deny his claimed divine guidance. Mormonism's foremost defender, Hugh Nibley, in 1961, declared this trial mythical and a product of wishful thinking, adding that if this court record is authentic, it is the most damning evidence in existence against Joseph Smith. Well, what was the story? It was this. Joseph Smith had claimed to find what he said was a seer stone or a peep stone. He said that he had this stone and he could place it into a hat, and he could turn the hat upside down on a table and look into it, and the stone would begin to glow, and in that stone he could then see buried treasure and where it was located. So,
and this was before handheld computers were
a
invented.
little before, yes. And so what he would do, what Smith and his brothers and his father would do, is take up their pickaxe and their shovels and go off to a nearby farmer and explain the situation and say, "We have located a buried treasure on your property, and if you're willing to pay us to dig it up, we'll dig it up for you." And typically the farmer would say, "All right, have a go," and he'd go off around his farm, and at the end of the day, after he'd brought his cows back in, he would stop by and say, "Well, what have you found?" And Joseph Smith would say, "Well, the demon who guards the treasure was disturbed when we started to dig, and he has pulled the treasure further into the ground. We're going to have to dig a little further to retrieve your treasure." And if the farmer was especially gullible, he would say, "Well, have a second go at it." And so they would dig until the farmer realized that he was being scammed, and he would pay off the Smiths for their time out of embarrassment, and they would go skipping off to the next gullible farmer and see how far he would let them go. Well, they did this for in a half a dozen cases, and these farmers' story was that Smith had been arrested and hauled into court and convicted of being a disorderly person and an imposter for digging for pretended treasure. And as I said, the church denied this absolutely for years and years and years, including its church historians. Then in the summer of 1971, there was a bright guy named Wesley Walters, and he said, "Well, I think I can disprove or prove that story." And so he took off on a trip to Shenango County, New York, and made a beeline for the sheriff's office. He went into the basement where the court records are kept, and he rummaged around through these heavy ledgers of older court records, and eventually he found the record. He discovered that Joseph Smith had been arrested. He had been charged with being a disorderly person and an impostor for digging for pretended treasure. He was brought into court. He was interrogated by Justice of the Peace Albert Neely, and he was convicted of fraud on March 20th, 1826. Well, according to the church historians, that should have been the end of the Mormon Church, but was not. So if we fast forward a dozen years, by this time Joseph Smith has married Emma Hale and has had several children. And there was a situation developing. Ever since he was married to his first wife, Emma, he had been having affairs behind her back, as early as 1833. And she was upset by this. She did not approve of that. So eventually Joseph Smith came up to her and he said, Emma, Almighty God has revealed to me that I am to have plural wives. And she said, you what? Or, well, we don't know exactly what she said, but we do know that she disapproved of the idea. So a little bit later he came up to her and said, Emma, Almighty God has revealed to me that if you refuse the doctrine of plural wives for me, you are to be destroyed. Well, if you're a woman and you're watching this show, I'd like you to put yourself in the shoes of Emma Smith at that time and think about this. She had 6 children to raise. One of them was a congenital idiot. She was just discovering that her husband was a nut and that she was having her life threatened either by Almighty God or by Joseph Smith or by either one of them or both of them together. But this was no la-di-da punishment in some afterlife. This was here and now. Her life was being threatened. What would you do? She caved, but she made Smith promise her that these additional wives of his were going to be spiritual wives, no physical relations, right? And he said, oh, right, spiritual wives it is. And he kept on doing it. I should say in 1997 there was a man named Todd Compton who did a thorough study of the plural wives of Joseph Smith. And he documented 33 plural wives that Smith had, probably more, but he gave biographies of all of these women in this very thoroughly researched study, some 800 pages. And he sums up Smith's affairs with all of these women this way. 55% of Smith's plural wives were single women. 12% of them were widows. 7 of these women were girls, aged 14 to 17. 33% of his plural wives were married women who were living with their husbands at the time. In 1841, he added 3 wives secretly. In 1842, he added 11. In 1843, he added 16. By that time, he was completely out of control. He was sending his apostles and his disciples off on proselytizing missions so he could make a move on their wives. Well, I can't cover all of that material. You could make several programs out of that mess. But I do want to mention just one of these. And this was a girl named Sarah Ann Whitney who was approached by Joseph Smith, and he said, Almighty God has revealed to me that you're supposed to be one of my plural wives. But before he approached her, he went to her parents for their permission. And the way he asked their permission was to say, Almighty God has revealed to me that your daughter Sarah Ann should be my plural wife. And they said, oh, okay, but you better ask her. So he approached her this way, and her response was what you might expect of a young woman. She said, oh no, I'm going to lose all my friends if I do, and you're more than twice as old as I am. And he said, no matter. And he said, you should think that if you refuse, you might be jeopardizing the eternal salvation of your father and your mother. Think about it. And so she thought about it, and she finally decided that the burden on her was too great to bear of blowing the chances of her parents' eternal salvation, so she gave in. Smith told her father to marry them, so she was married by her father to Joseph Smith on July the 27th, 1842, and this raised two problems for Smith. The first was that matter of Emma, his first wife, who didn't approve of these wives anyway. And the second was that as far as Smith's followers were concerned, here was an attractive young woman who was eligible, and she was going to be attracting romantically inclined men, and how is Smith going to deal with that? Well, he looked around and he found among his followers a widower named Joseph Kingsbury. So he goes up to Kingsbury and he said, Almighty God has revealed to me that you are to marry one of my plural wives, but on the understanding you won't lay a finger on her. This is just for appearance's sake. So Kingsbury said, all right, and then he went off and had more plural wives of his own. That took care of that, but Smith still had the problem of connecting with his new wife. That was a difficulty for Smith because he was on the lam from the law at the time. He was being shuttled from house to house so he could avoid arrest. So he decided to write her a letter. On August 18th, 1842, he wrote Sarah Ann, and it's quite a lengthy letter, but I'm just going to quote a little bit of it to give you a feeling for what kind of character this Smith was. He said, he wrote, my feelings are so strong for you, my absence from you seems so long and dreary, it seems I could not live long in this way. Come and see me in this my lonely retreat. Knock at the southeast corner of the house at the window. I have a room entirely to myself. The whole matter can be attended to with the most perfect safety. It is the will of God that you should comfort me. Now is the time or never. The only thing to be careful of is to find out when Emma comes, then you cannot be safe. But when she's not here, there is the most perfect safety. Burn this letter as soon as you read it. My life depends upon it. End quotations. Well, the letter was, of course, preserved, and it was kept in that Whitney family for almost 150 years. It was published by Dean Jesse in 1984 in a book called The Personal Writings of Joseph Smith in a photographic form. So there's a photograph of this letter. No question about the authenticity of this thing. Whether she took Smith up and knocked on the window and snuck in behind him his back, I don't know. Nobody knows that. That's the second point, and that shows what a complete deceiver he was. So he was, in the first place, convicted as a con artist, and second place, shown to be a complete deceiver of his wife, among others. Third point is a quickie. By 1844, Joseph Smith was laying out predictions and prophecies and revelations to anybody who wanted to hear. And one of the people who had a conversation with Joseph Smith at the time was a faithful True Blue follower named Oliver Huntington. Smith began talking about the people who lived on the moon. And this so excited Huntington that he ran right back to his house and he copied down the conversation into his journals as soon as they were finished. Well, this journal was kept by the Huntington family and eventually donated to the Historical Society of Utah in Salt Lake City years later, so it was beyond the reach of the Mormon Church, which has tried to cover up as much as it can of its history. So here you have Smith as a flat-out liar. What he had told Huntington in his conversation, several things about the people who lived on the moon, but among them were that the inhabitants of the moon lived on average 1,000 years, and that they dressed very much in the Quaker style. Well, little did Smith suspect that 125 years later there would be men walking on the moon, and alas, NASA did not report any sightings of people living about 1,000 years or living in the style of the Quakers in 1844. So here you have Joseph Smith. In the first case, a con artist, which you can prove from a public record, which you could see today if you wanted to. Second, that he was completely deceiving the people he was living around. A photograph of that letter is published in the last 25 years. Third place, in a private journal kept by a faithful follower of Smith, here is his story describing the people who lived on the moon. Man was a con artist, he was deceptive, he was a flat-out liar. And so here comes the question that I would ask, and that is, why would anybody have anything to do with a church formed by a person of this character, or lack of character? So my suggestion would be, the next time you see a couple of guys wearing white shirts and neckties, and they come bicycling up to your door, and one of them says to you, Almighty God has revealed to me, I would suggest you refer them to our website and close the door. And I should mention our website is atheist-community.org. If you go to that, you'll find a heading at the top of the page, reading library. You click on library. On the library page, you scroll down to a heading, articles by members, and click on that. And on that page, you'll find quite a long list of articles written by members of ACA on different subjects, alphabetically by the last name of the person who wrote the article. So if you scroll down to Kent and look opposite that, I've got a few articles there, one of which is named Mormon Schmormon, and that is a complete debunking of the Mormon Church. And I've been careful to give you sources for every statement I made in the article so you could follow it as far as your interest goes. Maybe you have no interest at all in the Mormon Church, but that is a very effective debunking of it. So if the Mormon Church wants to continue coming in here and preempting our atheist airtime, they're very likely to get this program played right back in their faces. Russell?
Okay, thanks for that, David. Before going on, I'd like to let people know that this is a live call-in show. The number will be appearing on the bottom of your screen unless today is a rerun, and then you won't see anything. But if you see the number, then call it, and you're welcome to come in. Apparently, a big topic today will be Mormonism, if people care to talk about it. How did you get so interested in Mormonism, David?
I had to say born. Now you're going to embarrass me. I was born into it. I was a member from 1949 till 1999, over 50 years. Very active in it for several years. Finally, so many people, I know is the case with Jeff, your church doesn't have an excommunication procedure, so they can still claim you on the membership rolls.
That's pretty standard practice for most churches.
Mormon Church does not like to excommunicate people because they like to use the statistics to show that they're a growing church. Well, I forced an excommunication in 1999 because of other instances I knew where people who became very anti-Mormon were claimed by the Mormon Church after they died. Vardis Fisher is one prominent example. Well, that wasn't going to happen to me, so I forced my way out. But yeah, I was deep into it. I took my undergraduate degree from Brigham Young. Hugh Nibley, who claimed that this story of Joseph Smith being convicted of money digging there was teaching at Brigham Young at the time. I took several classes from him. My wife and I were the third couple married in the Washington, D.C. Temple of the Mormon Church in 1974. We were way into it. I might mention one thing about my wife. She was a convert to Mormonism, and I had been in the thing my family had been for years. But she was converted because she went to a Mormon church meeting, and she came out of it, and she said, I thought, how can anybody they seem to be so nice, and so friendly, and so family-oriented, and so decent, how can people like that believe in the bizarre stuff that I've heard goes on in their temples? And so she joined the church, and she found out that what went on in their temples wasn't half bizarre. I mean, it was grotesque.
Really, okay.
It was, well, bizarre didn't have to describe what went on in their temples, and so she didn't waste too much time leaving the church. But it does raise an interesting thing that I think is phenomenon which is probably common.
So you both left the church at that point?
Became inactive. Yeah. I think in most cults, Scientology and the Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Hare Krishnas, you probably find the same psychological makeup where in a group that is so careful about its public image, so PR conscious, people are trained to present an absolutely perfect image on one side and at the same time realize, but I'm really over here and this is how we really are. They're just very conscious of the image. So
that also goes on in those bigger, more established cults that we call mainstream religions.
Yeah, there's a pressure to present an image, and it's very strong the more cultish a group gets. You present the image until you attract the person, and then once in, it's amazing. Once you start to believe any aspect of a church, how you can be really
Right. Well,
Trend.
I'm reminded of Julia Sweeney's appearance on This American Life when she was talking about the Mormon missionaries who came to her door and started telling her the crazy stuff right off the bat.
Oh, big mistake.
And she thought, you know, they might want to work on their presentation a little bit.
Well, usually they do when they come knocking on your door, and they've actually knocked on mine since. And if you bring up anything that is critical in any way of the whole idea, Joseph Smith or the Mormon Church or your experience in the Mormon Church, they are trained to respond, "That's very interesting, I'll have to look into that," and then go away. They will not discuss it.
Well, people in mainstream religions also do that, don't they?
They do.
So Julia Sweeney, isn't she going to be the featured? She's going to receive the Richard Dawkins Award at this year's 2006's Atheist Alliance International Convention.
Is that right?
I hadn't heard that.
Wow.
Yeah, Penn and Teller got it presented by Dawkins himself this year. Julia Sweeney is going to be the recipient next year.
I see a trend toward honoring entertainers mainly. If it's been Penn and Teller and then Julia Sweeney.
Well, it's entertainers right now that get away with saying this stuff to large audiences, and B, are paid more attention to.
That's true.
George Carlin
Sadly.
notoriously picked up his Emperor Has No Clothes Award from the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
So in a way, you could say that those are the people most responsible for sort of pushing the envelope.
They're in a position to do it.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Should we take our first call, or do you want to touch on anything else?
Oh, maybe we've got a Mormon. That'll be fun.
I think we should take the call,
Okay.
because I don't want to introduce a whole different topic.
All right. We're going to start with Harold on the line.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
I
I wanted to ask Mr. Kent if he was aware of the Meadows Massacre.
Oh, yes, the Mountain Meadows Massacre.
Yeah, September 11th, 1845, I think.
Yeah, that was, it was supposedly masterminded by a man named John Doyle Lee, who was one of Brigham Young's confidants. According to him, some of the Mormons dressed up as Indians, disguised themselves as Indians, and the whole story is quite a gruesome one. According to the same John Lee, who wrote a book just before he died called Confessions of John D. Lee, both Joseph Smith and Brigham Young also advocated and practiced castration. First of non-Mormons to keep them in line, and eventually of Mormons themselves. And
Well, it stands to reason. If you're going to
Interesting.
have all these guys with multiple wives, that means you got to do something with the rest of them who are left
extra
wifeless.
reduce the competition. That's very well documented, by the way, in the case of Brigham Young, by a little group, a husband and wife team, Gerald and Sandra Tanner. Sandra Tanner is a great-granddaughter of Brigham Young, who left the Mormon Church, but their position has been to adopt mainline Christianity. But they have been industriously turning out documents concerning the whole history of the Mormon Church for years and years. And at their website, which is utlm.org, they present the text of all of the blood oaths that Mormons are required to take in their temple, the stories about castration as practiced in the church in Utah. Some very gruesome, unbelievable stuff that the Mormon Church would give anything to cover up. And the Mormon Church has been notorious for a few years here in trying to buy all the documents that relate to its beginnings and dumping them into its underground vaults in Utah.
I guess they'll have to buy the internet now.
Well, something will have to be done, because you might recall that, half a dozen years ago, Mark Hoffman was forging letters and selling them to the Mormon Church. And they believed so-called salamander letters, and they were buying these documents up at a nice big price from him until they caught on that he might be forging them. And then there was a terrific violent back and forth in Salt Lake City. He actually killed a Mormon bishop, and I believe he's been tried. Mark Hoffman was the man's name, and I think he's still serving time in prison for that.
Yeah, didn't he use a car bomb or something?
Yeah, he used a car bomb for that.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. You just mentioned blood oaths, too.
Yes.
Are you aware of any evidence that Joseph Smith stole some of the rituals from Freemasonry?
Yes, it is documented and admitted by the Mormon Church that he was a master Mason, and that's where he got his Masonic hand clasps, some of the information that's given to Mormons who go through the Mormon Church. As far as blood oaths are concerned, one of the most interesting was this. After Joseph and his brother Hiram Smith were killed in 1844, all faithful Mormons who went through what they call the endowment ceremony in the Mormon Salt Lake City temple when that was constructed earlier in Missouri, in Illinois, every male was forced to take an oath in which he swore that he would try to revenge the deaths of Joseph and Hiram Smith. They were to try to track down and kill anybody who participated in that militia company who were guarding Joseph and Hiram Smith in jail when he was killed. They kept that up and required that until between 1900 and 1920, when it finally occurred to them that if anybody was left who was still alive who was involved in that killing in 1844, they probably were going to drop dead in the next 5 minutes, and so they dropped it. But as far as the Masonic thing, there is a blood oath that is still required to this day of both men and women in the Mormon temples, and that reads that if you ever reveal any of the secret hand clasps and signs and tokens that they have given to you, or the meanings of the marks on the holy underwear that they require Mormons to wear, if you ever reveal this in public, you signify your willingness to have your throat slit from ear to ear, and you do the little gestures, and your heart ripped out, and have yourself disemboweled in the case of men, emasculated. Those blood oaths are required even today, and it's grotesque in some ways because young men in the Mormon Church usually have to take this endowment ceremony just before they go off on their proselytizing missions, which most of them do for 2 years or 2.5 years. Women usually go through the endowment ceremony at the time they're going through for their weddings. So first time they encounter this little blood ceremony, a blood oath, they've got to take this blood oath, immediately following which they're taken through what they call a temple veil, and they're sent on upstairs to a higher floor to be married to their husband at an altar for time and eternity, which makes, it seems to be, a pretty gruesome wedding ceremony, but they're required to do it.
Yeah, I'd like to see you guys do a show on Freemasonry, because one of the tenets of Freemasonry is that you do believe in a God. You have to believe in some sort of higher power to join Freemasonry. So I would think that you guys as atheists would want to kind of touch on that.
Well, yes, it depends on the rite. There are Scottish Rite Masons, there are different Masonic orders, but generally they do expect you to believe in a higher power, yes. I'm not a Mason, never have been, but the Masons published a nice little expose of Mormonism a few years back, which is a lot of fun to read. But yes, there is a religious angle to that, and it is documented beyond any doubt that a lot of the secret ceremony in Mormon temples is lifted straight from Mormonism, thanks to Joseph Smith.
Okay. Thanks for your call. I've got a question from the studio. Have you ever revealed the secret handshake or symbols?
You want to hold your hand out? I'll show you.
You talked about the special underwear right here. So I think they're coming with the knives.
I know what you're asking me, Jeff. Am I wearing holy underwear?
No, I'm not. I assume, unless you just like it.
Not.
I did for years and years, and I have to say they are. My wife's primary objection to them was hygienic. Because you are required to wear them day and night, 24 hours a day, even when you take a shower.
Wow.
And which makes for some bizarre, well, you can imagine. But yes, I wore them for several years. I kept one pair of sacred garments. I have them at home for display purposes.
Display purposes.
Madeline used to have these.
Not sure anybody wants to see them now.
At her conventions, she used to have people dress up in Mormon underwear and parade back and forth as a fashion show. But, yeah, I wore those things. Have I ever?
Do women have special underwear, or just men?
You're also given secret names that you're never supposed to reveal.
What was your secret name?
You'll blow my secret name?
Yeah, what was your secret name?
Good heavens, Jeff. It's a name I don't much like, Jacob.
Oh,
Jacob.
that's not that
That's
secret.
not very secret. I was thinking like Leet Warrior or something.
No. For years and years, I went through the Salt Lake Temple. I think it was something like in the 60s. And at that time, they were still giving men names that they picked out of the Old Testament. And women would get Sarah or Elizabeth or whatever out of the Old Testament. Since that time, they seem to have run out of both imagination and Old Testament names. Because I know recently when, in the 70s, when we were still doing proxy baptisms and the kind of things that Mormons are into, they were giving out secret names like Frederick and Rosa, and just kind of running through the name book generally.
Sort of like hurricanes.
But what you do?
Did they ever run out of names and have to go into the Greek alphabet?
What
like
Mormons discovered? Yeah, like Alpha or Beta. Yeah.
You can go live on the moon and be called Alpha or Beta.
A lot of no question. A lot of Mormons, when they go through the ceremony, think, oh, this is my own personal secret name and nobody must ever know it, and these guys will never even tell their wives what their secret name is.
Yeah, and I alone was reincarnated from King Henry VIII.
And this
nobody else.
You know, your wife has her own name and she might tell her husband, he's never going to tell her his. But it has since been discovered by people who like to gossip a little bit that everybody in a particular session of 40 or 50 Mormons going through receives the very same female name or male name.
Oh, boy.
So it's like you and 50 other Fredericks, you and 50 other Roses.
But you don't tell each other, so...
No, never. Okay. So you never find that out.
Get away with it.
I wonder if you might find a few Voldemorts out there or something.
I doubt Harry Potter's made its way in there.
Don't speak the name.
Yeah, right, unspeakable name. But right. It's got a lot of peculiarities. It's a lot of ugliness in that church. It's very cult-like, trying very, very hard right now to mainstream itself. It used to have what they called an Adam God theory, because Brigham Young said basically Adam is the only God that you have and the only God with whom we have to do. Adam, he said. And then there used to be a little couplet in the church that was originated by one of the presidents, Lorenzo Snow, who said, as man now is, God once was, as God now is, man may become, which is basically the idea that
everybody is God of their own universe.
If you're faithful, you'll have your own universe, and you can procreate and create your own spirit children by the billions and billions, as Carl Sagan might say. And but that Gordon Bittner Hinckley, who is currently the president and prophet of the Mormon Church, I think he's 95 or 96 now, was asked about that in the last public interview he gave, and he said, I don't know that we have ever taught that in this church. Well, my God, for 30 years I remember being taught in my seminary classes that very thing, but they're trying to deny it as much as they can to mainstream the Mormon Church now. But the interesting thing about the Mormon Church is that it used to claim in recent decades that it was the fastest growing church in the country.
I heard that.
And what they say now, they've had to alter that to the fastest growing church in America, because most of their growth is in South America. It's people who are very poverty stricken and trying to get an economic leg up, and they're not doing much in the U.S. And the interesting thing, the last time I checked, is that the number of people in the United States who are becoming atheism, the non-religious sector of the American public, is growing faster than the Mormon Church is in the U.S. now.
Yeah, you know, it's not
that bullet.
That's not because we proselytize.
It's not that impressive.
You don't have to cut off any body parts or promise that you will.
That's true.
Or wear funny underwear.
I just want to say it's not that impressive to be the fastest growing church in America, because if you think about it mathematically, that probably just means you're very small. Because if you start out with one member and you wind up with 3 members the next year, then you've grown by 200%. That's pretty fast.
I should also point out, as an atheist, you are allowed to wear any kind of underwear you want.
Or not.
And wash them.
And pretty much not be judged about it. Except maybe for hygiene reasons.
Well, except by people who aren't atheists.
Yeah, right.
Well, the Mormon Church caught a lot of flack from inside, the Mormons who said, oh, you're cramping our lifestyle. They wanted to enter swim competitions and various things that a whole lot easier if you could wear a two-piece bathing suit or something. Or the long john suit that they used to have to wear up until about 1970 went down to your knees and down your arms. It was
not hydrodynamic.
Typical of the 19th century long john suit, made out of cotton or rayon.
Right.
And so the church gave way, they made exceptions, and they have revised the form of the sacred garments now over the years. They've tried to accommodate, or they've had to accommodate. Well, I recall the big they used to block African Americans from holding the Mormon priesthood, officiating in Mormon meetings. That they resisted for years and years. In the 70s, I think that happened. And the reason that they reversed their position was that they suddenly were faced with losing federal funding at several of their educational institutions. And then suddenly Spencer Woolley Kimball, the prophet at the time, had a sudden prayer session, and he came out with a revelation that said, well, fine, we're going to accept blacks in on the same basis as everybody else, and please reinstitute our federal funding.
Yeah. So. All right. Again, this is a live call-in show. The number is on the bottom of your screen, unless today is a rerun. If you don't see the number, then we're not live as you're watching us. The next caller is Donald.
He's been hanging on for quite a while.
Hi, Donald.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, I got one big question.
Sure.
Okay.
Why does the guy in the glasses look crazy?
Well, it's because I'm legally
You look
blind.
very sick. You look very sick. I think you.
Takes one to know one. Aha, there's a witty comeback.
I'm very nearsighted, and I have to wear these hideous thick glasses, otherwise I wouldn't do it.
Next caller, we have almost full lines now, but we don't have any names on the screen right now. So should we go on? Should we cover some news of the week?
You could.
Oh, there is a name, but I can't even pronounce it.
Do some news till we get
Do some news. Okay. There's an ongoing trial in Dover that pertains to intelligent design.
That's Dover, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Not the White Cliffs of Dover. That would be Britain.
Not Delaware.
And one of the big shots of intelligent design, Michael J. Behe, was appearing and testifying this week. And to refresh your memory, Behe is sort of the intellectual founder of what intelligent design is about. He wrote a book called Darwin's Black Box, in which he claimed that, evolution might happen, but what about biochemical processes? Nobody ever writes about that. And one, he was wrong. People do write about that. And two, that just happens to be a thing that's difficult to study right now, which means that there's little written on the subject because it's on sort of the frontiers of our knowledge. But Behe has been kind of a intelligent design crank for years and years. He's a well-known biochemist, or he's one of the few people in the movement who've actually written on in peer-reviewed journals, but he's written about real biochemistry stuff. None of his stuff about intelligent design has ever made it.
One article on intelligent design.
One.
According to the testimony I read.
By him?
Yes, that's what I heard them say.
Because I know there has been one peer-reviewed article on intelligent design, but not by him, in a minor journal.
Didn't the editors of that journal come back and admit later on that they regretted running that?
They did.
Yeah. Also, the folks that run the university where he is a professor came out with a statement saying that he's a professor here and he's free to say what he wants, but we think he's full of it.
Right. So
he said it nicer than me.
He was on the stand this week, and this was covered by New Scientist magazine. Astrology would be considered a scientific theory if judged by the same criteria used by a well-known advocate of intelligent design to justify his claim that ID is science, a landmark U.S. trial heard on Tuesday. Under cross-examination, ID proponent Michael Behe, a biochemist at Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, admitted his definition of theory was so broad it would also include astrology. The trial is pitting 11 parents from the small town of Dover, Pennsylvania, against their local school board. The board voted to read a statement during a biology class that casts doubt on Darwinian evolution and suggests intelligent design as an alternative. The parents claimed that this was an attempt to induce creationism into the curriculum and that the school board members were motivated by their evangelical Christian beliefs. It is illegal to teach anything with a primarily religious purpose or effect on pupils in government-funded U.S. schools.
It's interesting the context in which this came up. This is cross-examination of him. He is a witness called by the ID proponents.
Yes.
And he was asked, to respond to the fact that the National Academy of Science, the premier, most prestigious, largest, most influential scientific body in the United States, does not. Their definition of science.
Their definition
does
of
not
theory.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Their definition of theory is, quote, in science, a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world that can incorporate facts, laws, inferences, and tested hypotheses.
Right. And his response was to say, well, I don't agree with that. I have my own definition.
Right.
So that in one swoop, the entire defense of introducing intelligent design into this school has fallen from, well, it's okay to talk about intelligent design in school because it's a scientific theory, to it's okay to talk about intelligent design in public schools because Michael Behe says it's a theory.
Yeah, the National Academy of Science's definition of a theory is dumb. Let's all go with Michael Behe's version of it, because if we just change science, then by definition we can turn intelligent design into a science.
Yeah.
So Rothschild, the cross-examining lawyer, suggested that Behe's definition was so loose that astrology would come under this definition as well. He also pointed out that Behe's definition of theory was almost identical to the NAS's definition of a hypothesis. Behe agreed with both court assertions.
Wow.
So, yeah, your horoscope, science.
Well, I got to bring up the thing in India now.
Okay.
There was a recent event, big media event in India surrounding this Hindu guru guy. I don't know his exact background, but he practices astrology and claimed that he had a rock-solid prediction of when he himself was going to die. It was between like the hours of 3 and 4 o'clock on some recent Hindu holy day. And the local news media got hold of this, and there were cameras there live on him for that entire hour, waiting for this event to come to pass to prove the power of astrology. Well, at the end of the hour, he was still alive. In fact, a doctor pronounced him to be in perfect health.
Oops.
This raises a point which I think is worth mentioning right now, which is that, in fact, astrology, while it doesn't fit the National Academy of Sciences definition of a theory, is closer than intelligent design, because with astrology you can make testable predictions. This guy's claim that he was going to die between a couple of during this 1 hour span, that is a testable claim. It got tested and failed, but at least that was a claim that you can test. God did it is not a testable claim.
You don't suppose he planned to maybe off himself just to make his point, and he couldn't do it with all those cameras around?
I don't.
Perhaps he could have said something like, I would have gotten away with it if it hadn't been for you meddling TV people.
I generally, as crazy as people's beliefs are, I generally I'm willing to accept that they believe what they say they believe. Mm-hmm. But I should point out that the Rationalist Society of India was also in the media leading up to this, getting their point of view across, and they were insisting that if the man did die, there needed to be an autopsy.
Yeah.
To catch exactly that kind of trickery.
Right. Okay, we've got callers lined up again. We're going to Keith.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Keith.
Hi. Would it be appropriate to go back to the Mormon topic?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, for the gentleman in the glasses, I only came in the last 30 minutes of the show and didn't hear how much he had talked about his knowledge of the Mormon Church before that. But I'm just curious, in my own study of them, Joseph had the tablets that he claimed to have shown to followers that put letters that they print in the front of the Mormon book now that says that they saw them.
Right.
But I understand now they are all dead, but before they died, they also rescinded their original statement that they said they had seen those tablets. Have you studied that?
That's actually true. If you go to this website that I mentioned, UTLM, which stands for UtahLighthouseMinistry.org, That's the Tanner's website. They go into that testimony of 3 witnesses, and then the testimony by others who are all related either in-law or otherwise to Smith himself. And they actually give a summary of the position of each one of those witnesses to the handling or sight of the gold plates that Smith supposedly translated. Every one of them renounced it, I think with the exception of one. But they either became disenchanted with Mormonism, joined some other church, or washed their hands of it altogether. Every one of them except one, as I recall. But if you check that website, they have a section there on witnesses to the Book of Mormon and their ultimate positions.
Do you have any information as to why they still publish that in their Book of Mormon?
Well, it works. I mean, if you had a book that you were trying to sell, if you had written some sort of Holy Scripture and you wanted to sell it, and you could go out here and get half a dozen people to claim that you saw an angel, or you handled several gold plates that were covered up with a cloth, but they sure felt heavy, and they were willing to put their names to a statement that you wrote yourself, and say, yes, I'm one of the witnesses here, and I'm a member of this church, and I subscribe and I endorse it.
I think it should be clear, if you watch this show for long enough, there is no exposure of ridiculous things in a religion that cause sufficient embarrassment to make the whole thing fold up and close its doors.
But
not as long as there's still money in it.
You have a good point, and that is that the Mormon Church is so intent on mainstreaming their religion, I would not be surprised to see them dropping those statements eventually from the Book of Mormon.
That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, they like to get rid of awkward little historical things like that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay,
thanks for your call. Moving on, we're back to the person whose name I can't pronounce. I'm going to take a stab at Ugeral, and I'm going to let him correct me. Hello.
Okay, the correction is Ugeral.
Ugeral.
Okay.
Thanks.
My question is, what are you 3 gentlemen trying to accomplish with this show?
We are here to entertain
let's
you.
Answer him on the air.
Okay.
Thank you for your question.
Thanks for your question.
Well, I think I've explained what I was trying to do, and that is to provide a rebuttal to the Mormon nuisance they've caused.
Well, we get this question once in a while, and the answer is we have a TV show because, number one, as David mentioned earlier, atheists tend to be not have a lot of structures to get into to form social groups like the church, and so one of the reasons we're here is for social outreach, basically, because we have a group called the Atheist Community of Austin, and we like to entertain people and present an interesting face on atheism so that they'll come to our meetings, hang out, play games, drink, whatever.
Yeah, even short of the issue of organizations to be in. Atheism has been so demonized by the dominant Christian culture in our society that a lot of atheists think they're the only one they know.
Yeah.
And I can tell you personally from my own experience, I had an aunt when I was a kid who was sort of a black sheep in the family, and I never knew why until I was about 30. I found out it was because she was another atheist. And we have as much right as people of any other viewpoint to be able to hang out with others and discuss our point of view and share ideas and insights, and that's mostly what this show is for. But also it's for letting people who are believers out there know that we are not devil worship crazy people. We're not looking for excuses to be able to commit horrible crimes as we're often accused of doing, or any of the other horrible things atheists are often accused of. We are just folks. We have a different viewpoint, and this is our opportunity of letting you know what it is.
We don't have any at our meeting this morning. I think there were as many women as men, even though you see mostly men in this program.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if you're overweight. Doesn't matter if you look bizarre, as I suppose I do now. But anybody's welcome.
I don't know why people have decided to fixate on glasses.
Anybody's welcome. That's the point.
At least everybody's not bald on the show besides me. No.
That's true. And a final thing that I like to point out when this question comes up is, there are 3 public access channels. One of them, Channel 11, is entirely devoted to religious programming. And yet, that's not enough. Plenty of religious programming spills out onto the other 2 channels all the time. But nobody calls them and asks why they have a show. We're there to get our opinion out because this is public access and we're exercising our freedom of speech. Woohoo!
Yeah. Well, do you want me to go ahead and do my thing? And this does seem to be a lull in the calls.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to break the fourth wall and tell the studio that they need to find out who's on line 2 now, because it's no longer who they say it is. Go ahead, Jeff. Or should we go?
You can go, or you can take the calls.
Okay.
Up to you. You want to do calls? Do it.
Mike.
Yes, sir. Just
Mike.
Curious on the atheist belief. Where do you guys stand on mankind? I mean, where did man evolve from? Or, I mean, you don't believe that there is a God. So, and I respect your views. I'm not arguing. I just want a legitimate explanation on where did we come from? I mean, where did we evolve out of?
Can I give an answer to that?
Okay. You're being shown by the studio some websites where you can further read about the things we're about to say.
Can I?
You want to jot those down, but go ahead, David.
Can I recommend a book to you? This is by an evolutionary biologist named Richard Dawkins, who has a very high reputation in his field, and he's just published a book called The Ancestor's Tale. It's the entire story of evolutionary biology, and he will take you step by step back through the origin of mankind, right back to the beginning of life, in a very lively writing style. It's very easy to read, very informative. It's a lot of fun to read. Just been released in paperback, called The Ancestor's Tale, and the man's name is spelled Dawkins.
Okay. Well, and then I've read.
The short answer is evolution, and before that, physics.
Yeah, understood. But so they state that evolution took time, right?
Sure.
Took many years for us to evolve.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So why do we still have monkeys and apes on the planet?
Okay.
Do you
understand what I'm saying? Why don't we have? I'm not arguing, right? But why do we have? Why do we have in between? I mean, why don't we have the in between evolution and we still have those genetic genes,
That's actually
in
a very
monkeys,
good question.
and monkeys are still monkeys, and apes are still apes, and gorillas are still gorillas. But you don't find the in between examples of the scientific explanation of how man evolved.
I'd like to answer your question.
Sure.
This is a common question from people who don't have a lot of background in what evolutionary theory actually states. The fact is that every species is as much in transition from what its ancestors were to what its descendants are going to be as any other. It's an ongoing process. Now, get to specifically address this issue about, gorillas are still gorillas. Well, evolution does not say that, evolutionary theory does not say that simultaneously all gorillas are changing the same way. In fact, what evolution says is that individuals of all species are, as their descendants, are slightly changed in a wide variety of ways. Natural selection is the process that causes those descendants whose changes are more beneficial to them to survive, and that is why you get trends over time, so that you wind up with a a species of things with similar characteristics because they interbreed, and they interbreed. The ones that have the useful characteristics interbreed, spread them through that population, and you get a bunch in that location that look the same. But another thing evolution does not imply is that all the members of one species change into one other particular species. If a million years from now, if you have two populations of gorillas on opposite sides of a mountain range, you will find that as they've evolved, they may very well have evolved in different directions, right? You might have some that are just fine the way they are, that don't change much because their characteristics are well suited for the environment that they are in. But on the other side of the mountain range, if there is some sort of different environmental conditions over there, that group might, over a million years, evolve into something that is a cousin to gorillas. You see, so it's this assumption that because species are still intact, that therefore there was no evolution, just misses the point. That's not what evolution implies.
Right. I'd like to add to that. The definition of a species is something that can only interbreed with itself. So, if you have a speciation event where something is actually classified as another species because it can no longer interbreed with something like a human, I think, can't interbreed with a gorilla. Once a speciation...
You think?
For one thing, no one would ever try.
Say that again?
No, for one thing, no one would ever try that experiment because it's yucky.
Okay.
So ignore that and just assume, and I'll just say, no, humans can't interbreed with gorillas.
But scientifically, it's been proven, though,
that
humans cannot interbreed.
Well, there haven't been experiments.
Yeah, but you know what can interbreed, interestingly? Llamas and camels. Llamas and camels are not physically capable of copulating, or it's extremely unlikely. They're also not particularly attracted to each other. But it just so happens, because of the genetics involved, that if you artificially inseminate one from the other, you get a camma, which is the name they came up with for their crossbred species.
I think that's a reason why I said I think, because I'm not actually sure whether you could artificially inseminate a gorilla, and again, that would be a yucky thing to try, so nobody does.
We're not recommending it. But here's another point.
To finish my previous point, once a speciation event occurs, there's no particular reason why the two different species shouldn't sort of drift apart. And species tend to stay with each other, but not with the ancestor that they evolved from, which means that, humans and apes could start out here, but over time they go here, so that you don't see any intermediary forms.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's it. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do want to add one more point after he's off the air.
Okay.
He's calling an atheist show and asking him what we think, and we come up with evolution. But it's important to draw the distinction. Atheism does not mean belief in evolution. Atheism means lack of a belief in a God. We don't believe that there's a God, right? And we have reasons why we don't believe that there's a God, and actually evolution isn't particularly one of them. Evolution is, when the question comes up, where do we think, life came from and why is it the way it is and all that stuff, we have our other reasons for thinking it doesn't look like there's any kind of a God. And then we look around for an explanation for the origin of species that does seem to make sense in light of the fact that there doesn't appear to be any evidence that there's any gods. And I think that's important to understand. If you really want to know what evolutionary theory is all about, go ask some scientists. I am a game designer. Russell is what are you?
Computer programmer.
Computer programmer. David, what do you do?
Editing.
Editor. We are not scientists. We are people who, for our own reasons, and we'll be happy to answer people's questions about those reasons if they want to ask us. We don't believe there's any gods, so we look around at the explanations for the origins of life, and evolution is the one that makes the most sense, right?
Yeah. A couple of rolling announcements that I should be making regularly. We will be meeting after the show at Fresh Choice, so if you're atheist or atheist friendly, then you can join us at around 6:45 at 9761 Great Hills Trail, north of the Arboretum. And also, if you don't get on the show today with your call, or if you'd like to get in touch with us but you're too shy to go out on live television, then you can always email tv@atheist-community.org during or after the show, and it goes to all the various hosts, co-hosts, and producers who can all take a crack at replying if you're interested.
One more example of the point I was making. There's these folks called Raelians who are UFO worshippers, and they call themselves atheists because they don't believe in a god. They believe in space aliens, and they think that where life came from is that space aliens came here and did it. Now, I don't agree with them about that is the most sensible explanation of the origin of life, but we're both atheists. So really, and that's again to make the point that atheism does not equal belief in evolution. Yeah, the reason the three of us here think evolution is the explanation is because we've looked at a lot of different explanations, and that's the one that makes the most sense.
Okay, moving.
Sorry.
Yeah, moving on to our next caller, we have Thomas. Hello.
Yeah, man. What's up? You hear me?
How much?
Hey.
Yep.
Yeah, man. I was wondering what atheists think of like homosexuals and getting married and stuff.
Oh, next program, isn't it?
Is it?
Same-sex
Somebody
marriage?
going to do a thing on that? Once again...
No official position, but...
Y'all don't got an official position at all?
Atheism is just...
What
was that?
What?
Did he bark?
Oh, I don't know if he barked or if there was a dog in the background.
Atheism is just the
question.
lack of a belief in a god. So that means we don't think there's some invisible man in the sky who said that homosexuality is bad. And from that basis, then, if you ask us what we think of gay marriage, we're going to go, well, would it really cause any trouble? We certainly, well, I'll speak for myself, but I certainly don't understand all this hoopla about how if there's gay marriage, that's some kind of threat to straight marriage. I'm a straight guy and married, and I don't see how the existence of gay people that are married is going to cause me any difficulties at all. And since I don't believe in the invisible man who said that it's evil, I look at it and go, well, it seems to be a pretty straightforward civil rights issue.
Maybe they think that homosexuality is just so tempting to everybody that you'd get all straight guys who were like, well, I was going to marry this woman, but hey, I'm going gay because I can. Wow.
I don't think that's how it works, but
I don't think so. But that may be what they think. And I'd like to also mention that recently in Massachusetts, what was it? They've had gay marriage legal for a year now, and as far as they can tell, no bad effects have happened to straight marriage of any kind, and that caused an overwhelming vote to continue, not overturn this, even by Republicans there, because they just have no support anymore in that state. Next caller is Tracie.
Hey.
Hi.
I just wanted to kind of offer a little bit of a response to the guy that was talking about where the in-between, I guess, prior human ancestor species.
Yes.
People a lot of times get hung up, I guess, with evolution, and they look at it in terms of, oh, this is really far-fetched, and when they're coming from a Christian perspective, and they don't really seem to accept that you can change the genetic makeup of a species over time. And what's weird to me about that stance is that we have species that people have done that to in very short amounts of time.
Yeah.
Like we breed cattle, we breed dogs, we breed cats, we change species like all the time by simply changing the way they can breed or inhibiting their breeding to specific animals.
Right, and I think technically you could interbreed like a Saint Bernard with a Chihuahua,
right?
But in reality you couldn't, which makes them separate species.
The question that he was asking is almost like, where are the pre-Dachshunds? You know, where are those dogs that were the Dachshunds before they were Dachshunds? You know, I mean, at some point you had a wild
dog. Well, they're dead.
Huh?
the dogs that came before the Dachshunds are dead.
Well, but I guess what I'm trying to say is you have the Dachshund, but you don't have the dogs that were bred into Dachshunds. That doesn't mean that God created Dachshunds.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because even creationists are basically forced to accept microevolution, and if you look at the shrewd creationists, there's pretty much none of them that say that, like, the dogs weren't all one species.
Right.
So when you say that, I think that's a good point to make to creationists.
Yeah, I mean, in a real, I mean, what you're doing is controlling the genetic population and controlling the breeding, and environment does that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when it's people doing it, there's no argument.
I'm going to remember that. Thanks.
Then that's an important point. I've actually encountered creationists who, when given breeding programs by human beings as an example of proof of the existence of the mechanism, they say, well, but that just proves there had to be some intelligent force making it happen. And no, as you said, the environments change over time, and populations move around to new environments, and that changes the pressures on their breeding, and artificially does, or naturally does, what human beings do to them artificially when we breed.
I mean, it's just the same result with a different influence.
Yeah.
And everybody can see how the evolution occurs when we do breeding programs.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to go ahead and bring that up.
Yeah, thanks.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Thanks, Tracie.
Thanks. Sure, that's a really good analogy to make.
Now should I do my thing?
Yeah, I think you should.
This is an amusing
Are
story.
you sure? I mean, we got 18 minutes left in the show.
18
are you
minutes?
sure you want to use it up?
Good grief. No, not in 18 minutes.
No,
let's take more calls. We need more calls.
Next month, we'll have Jeff D. talking about miracles. So make sure that you tune into that show, because it will be the best show ever.
Isn't our next show going to be on same-sex marriage?
He means next month.
Next month.
The next show when I'm on, which will be a month from now.
4 shows after today.
I mean, this next week. Yeah.
Here we go. We have Matt.
Matt.
Guys.
Hi, Matt.
Hi.
I've got a comment and a question.
Okay.
My comment is about understanding evolution in terms of I like the term natural selection better than evolution, in that if you look at it from a perspective of animals that survived ice ages because they had more fur, it's not so much that they evolved, whereas it is so much that the other people who didn't, the other animals that didn't have fur died.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what's meant by punctuated equilibrium, right?
Right. So that's just to help people. That's the way I understand it. But my comment was made. I consider myself agnostic. A lot of people say agnosticism is just atheists in denial, but I disagree with that. So I'm wondering what you guys' definition of agnosticism is, first of all.
Please let me do this.
All yours.
There's a great book by a guy named George Smith, who happens to be an objectivist, and I don't agree with him on that philosophical point, but the book is called
Atheism, the Case Against God?
Atheism, the Case Against God, thank you.
I've seen that.
He tackles the whole atheism, agnosticism issue, and while what he says, you're not necessarily going to find this in dictionaries, right? I thought these were very useful distinctions, okay? He draws a distinction between, there's 2 different issues. There's, do you claim what do you claim to believe, and what you claim to know? Am I saying this right? Gnosticism is a religious stance where you claim to know that God exists, right? Or when you apply Gnosticism to religion, right? It's a claim of knowledge that there's a God. Agnosticism is simply the lack of knowledge that there is a God.
All right, cool.
Right? Theism is belief in a God. Atheism is the lack of a belief in a God. And with those two sets of dichotomies, you can actually form 4 different positions. You can be a Gnostic theist who claims to know that there is a God and believes in it, or you can be an agnostic theist. In fact, a lot of theists today don't realize this, but they are agnostic theists. When they admit they can't prove that God exists, but they believe in him anyway, that's an agnostic theist.
All right.
Likewise, you can be a Gnostic atheist who claims to know for sure there's no gods, or you could be an agnostic theist where you don't know if, an agnostic atheist where you don't know if there's any gods or not, but you don't believe in them.
Okay.
So
I think the whole thing is the I want to refrain from claiming, I can't stand proselytizing in religions, and saying we're right because of this reason. Well, but I just think nobody has proof of anything. Whereas I don't think that there probably is a God, I'm not going to rule that out because I'm not positive.
Then you're in the same position that we are.
Okay.
And we're just comfortable with calling ourselves agnostic atheists.
But hang on. Do you believe that there is a God?
I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
but
I doubt it. No, I don't believe that there's a God. I would need to shake his hand.
Huh?
I would need to shake his hand.
So until then, you don't actually believe in him.
Right.
So on that basis, you're an atheist. Right. Okay. You don't have theism. And that's what an atheist is. It's a guy without theism. Now, you can give agnosticism as your explanation for your atheism. Right. And that makes perfect sense.
I just didn't want I didn't know if you guys were being a little elitist in the sense that you know that there's no God.
We don't.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so.
More specifically, whether what I am among those 4 positions really depends on the God you're talking about, right? I love to give this example. If I went to a South Seas island and the islanders took me over to show me their totem pole, and they said, that there totem pole is our God.
Right.
I'm a Gnostic theist.
Right, I got it.
Regarding their God. I can see it. I can go rap on it with my knuckles. I might still have some, questions, doubts about whether it's got the miraculous powers they attribute it to. Right.
Well, I get in a fight with all these people who knew, Aztecs were forced to become Catholics primarily through, blood.
Yeah.
So, and I have a problem with people saying, well, if you don't find Jesus, you're going to hell. Well, tell that to the Buddhists, they don't, or tell that to the guy on the island who's never dealt with Jesus, didn't come to his island, maybe he believes in it. So I think that's an elitist thing on other religions.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you don't become an atheist, we don't claim that anything bad will happen to you, except for the bad things that might naturally happen from believing things that aren't true.
Yeah. The Raelian comment was good too, by the way. Those are the guys, the cloners, right?
Yeah. They claim that they did some cloning. There's no evidence at all that they ever did.
Hey, that's fascinating entertainment, though. Those guys' website. That's good stuff.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, guys. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for your call.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was Matt on 3, right?
Matt on 3. So let's talk to Kevin, you think?
Sure, why not?
Okay. Hello, Kevin.
Yes, this is Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
I just had a basic question for you guys. I respect y'all's opinion. I think y'all have very healthy discussions to be talking about what y'all are talking about today.
Okay.
I am a Christian. I do believe in God and Jesus Christ. And I was just curious, through the years, the Bible and I think people have proven that Jesus Christ did walk the face of the planet. He was.
In what way?
He did exist. And I was just kind of curious, who do y'all think? Who do y'all think? Jesus
in what
Christ
way
was,
do you think that's proven?
Yeah, what is the proof of that?
Well, I think the Bible proves a lot that my cousin is a pastor and he's very educated and you guys are too, but he says there's more proof that Jesus Christ walked the face of the planet and he actually existed than there was that Abraham Lincoln was the president of the United States. That's what
we have photographs of Abraham Lincoln.
Jeff, can I?
That's a bit different nature of evidence.
Can I take this?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'd like to suggest you go to our website and under the library section, there are articles by members. There's an article written by me, which is entitled Jesus, Fact or Fiction. And one of the foremost champions of Christianity is Josh McDowell, who wrote a book, The Evidence Demands a Verdict. And he lists several arguments, historical facts that he claims prove that Jesus Christ existed. And I research each one of those so-called facts that he lists, and I debunk it, showing that his facts are without basis. So
Yeah.
if you want to contrast the arguments of Christian scholars and an atheist position, debunking all of those to show that there's no evidence, historical evidence, that Jesus Christ ever did exist, that article would be a good place for you to look into it.
Now, there's something I'd like to clear up, though, which is we're not saying that Jesus Christ definitely didn't exist, because we don't really claim to know that sort of thing. But there's actually several parts to your that you might have in mind to your question. One is, did Jesus really exist? One is, did he actually say and do the things that are attributed to him in the Bible, or was that, was a lot of that just creative writing? And number three, if he said and did some of those things, does that prove that he was a God in human form who had magic powers? And I think I could speak for most atheists in saying we're skeptical about all three of those things.
But how could one individual create such a following?
Well, did you hear David's discussion of Mormonism?
Yes, I did.
Well, there's an example of one individual that has a whole...
Got 12 million followers.
Yeah.
I wouldn't exactly associate Mormonism with Christianity. I mean, that's not...
Well, it's been around 200 years ago instead of 2,000.
Yeah,
so
you asked the question. There is an example. Individual, normal human beings, even shysters, can and have successfully started large religious movements. It's just a fact. So the argument that because Christianity is big and successful, therefore it must be true, because no human being could successfully start a thing like that, that doesn't follow. That is not proof that there's no Jesus. Like Russell said, we're not claiming to know either way. But I do know, and this is the sort of thing referenced in David's article, but I have looked at many of the things presented as evidence that Jesus had a historical existence, and a lot of it is pretty shaky. In fact, there was a movie out there called The God Who Wasn't There, which I think you can find at www.godmovie.com. TheGodmovie.com,
Yes.
something like that goes into this a little further. There was something else that I wanted to say.
I don't know. I'd like to say that if you would like to have a more in-depth discussion and maybe provide some of this evidence, or if your cousin, you said, who's a pastor,
I remember what it was,
would like to get in touch, then there's always our email address, which is on the website, and it's tv@atheist-community.org. And that goes for the people who don't manage to get in the next 7 minutes of the show also.
One of the things Russell brought up was the question of whether Jesus, if he historically existed, said all the things attributed to him in the Bible. There was a group of biblical scholars that had a project called the Jesus Seminar, where they analyzed the Bible, trying to figure out which bits of it they could, with any kind of reliability, say were probably actually Jesus' words and not paraphrasings or words put into his mouth by the authors that wrote it down. And their conclusion was that not much of it holds up under scrutiny. And what's interesting, and you might want to go back to that relative of yours who's a pastor and take him into a private setting and say, I really want to know. Because my mother is a Methodist minister, and she told me that she was exposed to the findings of the Jesus Seminar in her seminary when she was training to be a pastor. They know, she as a pastor knows that a lot of the stuff that is supposed to be quotes from Jesus in the Bible probably isn't, probably is made up. And I said to her, do you tell the people in your pews that about this fact that you know? And she says, no, they're not ready to hear that. So it's entirely possible that because they think it's for your own good, you've got religious teachers who are telling you things that they know aren't true. So you might want to check that out.
Okay, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Thanks for your call.
Whew.
Let's see, 5 minutes left in the show. Going to throw in another announcement about Fresh Choice. If you enjoy the show today, then you can meet us at 9761 Great Hills Trail about 50 minutes from now, 6:45. It's just north of the Arboretum. It's not that hard to find. And if you'd like to come hang out, then by all means do so.
Just that's only if you're watching this show live on the 23rd of October, 2005.
Right. All right, I guess we're going to wrap up the day with a repeat caller. Ugeral is back. Hello.
Okay, I understand a little bit of the philosophy you're giving on your show.
That's good.
Okay, but why can't you, as an atheist, give me any philosophical or logical reason to why there's such a perfectly made mechanical universe that operates perfectly?
Okay, we will answer your call, answer your question.
Thanks for calling again.
The reason why we can't give you that in a complete detail is because, like we said before, we're not scientists. We are people who don't happen to believe in a God, and from that position, we have looked at the various claims of where the universe came from, and it seems to us evolution makes the most sense. And not just to us, but to scientists. So could we have those links to the evolution pages back up on the screen? Guys in the control room?
Talkorigins.org.
Okay.
And there was another one that I'm actually not familiar with.
Yeah.
Jeff, could I add a piece on this?
Yeah, that's all I had to say. Okay. The place to go if you want to get the more detailed answers of what scientists have uncovered about the origins of life and the earth and stuff, those are the kinds of places to go, not to an atheist TV show where you're talking to a game designer and a computer programmer and an editor.
I think in February 2005, Roger Penrose, who's probably the premier mathematical physicist at Oxford, wrote a book called The Road to Reality, which is on the bestseller in the science category earlier this year. He's got a section in there devoted to discussion of what is called the anthropic principle. In other words, that the universe, he was addressing the argument that the universe is must be designed because there are so many aspects of it that if they were slightly off from what they have been, we wouldn't exist today. Therefore, they must have been created so that we could exist today.
So the argument goes.
Called the anthropic principle, and he has the knowledge and background to understand that argument, and he very clearly and deliberately takes it to pieces.
Yeah, here's a very good point, I think, for people that think the universe looks like it was designed for human life. The vast majority of the space occupied by the universe is vacuum, which is instantly deadly to living things, human beings included. In our own solar system, we know of only one planet that is able to support human life. There is no evidence at all that we're in a universe that was designed for human beings, because if it was, you'd expect human beings to be able to live and to survive in a lot more places. In fact, huge portions of our own planet are inimical to human beings unless we, dress ourselves up in protective gear. What the actual laws of physics seem to be well tuned to promoting the existence of is black holes. There's a book out there that makes this case.
I don't remember that.
You fiddle with those constants of the universe that creationists are always talking about. These initial variables, if they were a little bit different, you couldn't get human beings. An even bigger impact if you start fiddling with those variables is you stop getting black holes as much.
And
black holes can exist all over the place. We're just lucky we don't have any near us.
Yeah. Bottom line is we don't know how many planets there are that don't have life, and we don't even know if this is the only universe out there. Could be that there are gazillions of universes with no life. Anyway, we're out of time. That's our show. Email tv@atheist-community.org if you didn't get on. Come to Fresh Choice in 45 minutes. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.
Bye-bye.